All right, hello again, everybody. This is the Fantasy Sports Boss with another fantasy football podcast for you. NFL playoffs fully underway now. It is Sunday, January 12th, 2025, and have a jam-packed program today. Going to go over the games that took place yesterday. Of course, the Houston Texans and Baltimore Ravens coming away with pretty much one-sided victories. Going to preview the games for Sunday. Also want to discuss the NFL Hall of Fame vote. That's going to be, becoming a big storyline going into the Super Bowl week as well. In particular, Eli Manning and what his, candidacy looks like is very, more than any player probably on the ballot, is drawing the most, debate on both sides whether he deserves to be in or not. And also wanted to check in on the MLB Hall of Fame ballot, because that's always fun every year to do. I have my Hall of Fame picks for that as well. College football playoff, where we're at there and all the other things. So make sure you guys hit that subscribe button if you haven't done so already. Going to start with the Houston Texans knocking off the Los Angeles Chargers 32-12. And I have to be honest with you, I know I'm not alone. I was of the mind that the Texans were going to be one and done in these playoffs, especially against a very well-coached Chargers team with a star quarterback, an emerging star receiver, having a very impactful defensive line that can help bottle up the Houston running game and put more pressure on a passing attack that has not been very good this season. Ever since Stephon Diggs went down, C.J. Stroud's continued struggles as an NFL sophomore. But the Houston defense showed up in spades, and Justin Herbert, after only throwing 3 interceptions the entire season, throws 4 in this one. Just an awful performance by Herbert, who has now lost his last 2 playoff games in ugly fashion. And the Chargers go down meekly to the Houston Texans in a one-sided defensive led effort by Houston, and Houston has now won their last year they beat the Cleveland Browns in their first playoff game. They win their first playoff game here. DeMeco Ryans is a very good coach, had this team ready to go. Jim Harbaugh kind of fell on the sword after the game saying blame me, but Justin Herbert certainly was just not good at all. 14 of 32 for 242, a touchdown and 4 interceptions. The running game did nothing. J.K. Dobbins, they're going to have to get a running back in next year for this team. Gus Edwards is done. J.K. Dobbins, after a big start to the season, just wilted as the season went on. The length of the season got to him. He hadn't played a full season in a long time with all the injuries that he's had, and it showed as he was on fumes by the end of the year. And the Chargers really, they got the receiver in Ladd McConkey, who was unbelievable. 9 catches for 197 and a touchdown, including an 86-yard score. We'll get to him in a second, but they're going to have to fix this running game. Whether they make a move for the Boise State kid in the draft, who would be a really good selection in my opinion. That's going to be the next phase for this Chargers team. But Ladd McConkey, like I said, 9 for 197 in a score. Ladd McConkey is the real deal, folks. If you watch Ladd McConkey, and especially in this game, he gets off such instant separation. He reminds me of Deontay Johnson, believe it or not. We had a cameo for Deontay Johnson in this one with the Texans, 1 catch for 12 yards. He reminds me of Deontay Johnson in that, he's a slot dynamo. He gets off the line very quickly, and he gets instant separation. If you look at his routes, when McConkey goes into his break, he's instant acceleration, gets that instant separation, and he is on the has a great chemistry going with Justin Herbert. Ladd McConkey's the real deal. He's a more athletic Keenan Allen in this offense. And we all know how good of a fantasy football player Keenan Allen was over the years with Justin Herbert. The two were in lockstep constantly, and that's what Ladd McConkey is going forward. The touchdowns, he had 7 this year. He's going to be in that 7 to 10 range. If he can get to double digits, that will elevate him even further in PPR. Much in the same way, a couple of years ago, I said the same about Amon-Ra St. Brown. He had to get to that double-digit mark to be a bona fide wide receiver one in PPR. He has done that the last 2 years. That's Ladd McConkey's assignment for next year, but he is pushing in on that early third round ADP in fantasy. And if you choose to go running back, or running back quarterback, listen, you could get a 100 catch guy in Ladd McConkey in the third round of drafts, and then I think you could follow that up with a Jackson Smith and Jigba in round 4, and have a swell first 2 wide receivers who both could be wide receiver ones for the price of a third or fourth round. That, I'm already starting to put scenarios in my head about how the early rounds of the draft is going to go next year. If I do now go running back route, which that was the winning play this year, the Barkley, Bijan Robinson, and Derrick Henry, that was the winning strategy, going those running backs early. If I do the running backs early next year, I could look at Ladd McConkey in third round. I could look at Jackson Smith and Jigba in the fourth round and end up with a terrific, slightly underrated duo to front my PPR team. Now, as far as the Texans are concerned, CJ Stroud, 22 of 33, a touchdown and a pick. It's been a lot of struggles for CJ Stroud in his sophomore year, to the point that we have a discussion again about him and the kid in Carolina there, about who is the top guy. Now, clearly, you have a draft tomorrow. You're still taking CJ Stroud over Bryce Young, but Bryce Young has played really well down the stretch of the season. Now, the games didn't matter, so that is a factor that we're going to have to take into consideration. And again, you're going to draft C.J. Stroud as a top 12 guy next year. You're going to have Stephon Diggs back from injury. You're going to have Nico Collins, who is 7 for 122 and a touchdown. These are all good signs for him moving forward, but it has not been without struggle for Stroud this year. But again, I told you guys, as QB5, and that was his average draft position, it was way too expensive for a guy who was just coming off a rookie season, albeit a really good one. Now, Nico Collins, from a fantasy perspective, it's an interesting debate with Nico Collins. I'm already seeing early predictions. He's going to be a late first-round pick, early second-round pick. I'd rather have Drake London than Nico Collins. I love Nico Collins as a player, but with Stephon Diggs back next year, now Tank Dell, that's the other thing. Tank Dell's not going to be available at the beginning next year, so that does put Collins back into a legitimate late first round, early second round, but I think I'd rather have Drake London, although it is a discussion, no doubt about it. It is a discussion. I think London has slightly less competition for targets than does Nico Collins, because you still have Dalton Schultz, who's capable. You have Stephon Diggs, who's going to be coming back from injury. I do like Collins a lot, but late first-round pick, I might be a little hesitant to go there. Joe Mixon, 25 for 106 in the score, 4.2 per carry. Like Joe Mixon, we saw how bad he was down the stretch of this year. I think he is another guy who has hit that wall, the proverbial wall, the running back wall, as he's aged. But it was a good game for him here. Let's get to the Baltimore game. 28-14 over the Steelers. Listen, the Steelers have now lost 7 games in a row to finish the season. Nobody thought that they had any chance in this game. All right, let's face it. And Lamar played pitch and catch this entire game. 16-21, 2 touchdowns, runs for 81 yards. Like, Lamar Jackson, to me, he's just a video game fantasy player. Josh Allen will be the number 1 fantasy quarterback off the board next year. Lamar Jackson undoubtedly will be number 2. And coming into this past season, Jackson was even going behind past C.J. Stroud. It was Jalen Hurts, Pat Mahomes, and Josh Allen. That was the big 3, and then it became Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, C.J. Stroud in that next grouping. Because, and I own Jackson in 2023, it was a underwhelming regular season. Lamar Jackson's per-game fantasy output in 2023 was disappointing until he went bonkers in the championship game when he put up 50-plus against the Miami Dolphins, which won me a league. So I'm eternally grateful for Jackson, who's always been one of my favorites. I have his jersey. I just love the guy. I think he's just a phenomenal player. Has to answer about the playoff struggles, though. He's got to win this year, and he's off to a good start there. But as far as fantasy is concerned, like, he's the second guy off the board next year. I don't think there's any question. It was downright silly, the numbers, both passing and running. He's still under 30. He's going to be under 30 next year. I believe he's going to be 28 next year. So he's still in his prime. He's still going to run. He's got another 2 or 3 years, I think, of big-time running, and then things, age will start to take hold a little bit there and maybe lessen his running. But he was absolutely phenomenal, league winner, whatever you want to say. Like Lamar Jackson, to me, is going to be very tempting next season, and Josh Allen as well. But for me, personally, when it comes to the quarterbacks, I've already started looking at things. I think the value at quarterback next year is within Pat Mahomes in round 4, Bo Nix, because it's going to be Jaden Daniels will be third. Even Jalen Hurts, the 4th quarterback, will off the board. Pat Mahomes will be the 5th. Joe Burrow 6th. I think one of those 3 would be the better value over the top 3. Like Josh Allen's going to be a 2nd-round pick. Lamar Jackson's going to be a late 2nd-round pick. Jaden Daniels could be late 2nd, early 3rd. I don't think that's good value. I think Jalen Hurts, late 3rd. Pat Mahomes, late 3rd. Joe Burrow, late 3rd, early 4th. That's the value. And then, so I'm looking at those 3 and failing to get one of those 3. I told you guys, Bo Nix, and even Caleb Williams, if the right coach is hired. He ran for over 400 yards as a rookie. And remember, like that's the key in fantasy for these quarterbacks is when they run like that. So Caleb Williams, even though there's a lot of noise around Caleb Williams, I won't avoid him outright when it comes to fantasy. But Bo Nix, I absolutely love as well. But getting back to this game, Derrick Henry, 186, 2 scores on the ground. 7.2 per carry. Every year we keep thinking Derrick Henry is going to fade, and it never happens. It never happens. So next year, I will be 100% honest with you right now. I have never owned Derrick Henry ever on any of my fantasy teams. Because I've always shied away from him. I only do PPR leagues. He doesn't catch the football. But he's so unbelievably dominant running the ball and collecting touchdowns that it minimizes that. Because he doesn't catch the ball. So that's a valid issue in PPR leagues. But it's mitigated with his excellence running the ball and collecting an insane amount of touchdowns. And I think next year will be the same thing. I don't see any signs of decline from this guy. And with Lamar running, it softens up that defensive line for Derrick Henry. Now, there's going to come a year where the wheels start to come off, and when he doesn't catch, and when he's not catching those passes, it's going to really hurt you, making him a late 1st round, early 2nd round pick, because that's where he's going to be. But he's just a freak of nature. And I think the first 2 years of his in the league where he wasn't carrying the ball as much, he wasn't really a bell cow his first 2 years in the league, I think that has helped extend his career a little bit. George Pickens, 5 for 87 and a score. Big deal. I've said this a million times too. George Pickens needs to get on a team with a quarterback. George Pickens has 2nd round PPR talent if he got on a team with a Josh Allen, a Pat Mahomes, a Jalen Hurts, any of those guys. He would be a dominant wide receiver 1. It's not talent. This Pittsburgh offense is so listless, so boring, so just bereft of big plays. It's ridiculous. They can't run the ball anymore. They don't have a quarterback. They need to do something. Russell Wilson's not going to be back. Justin Fields is not going to be back. What are the Steelers going to do at quarterback? Do they make a play for J.J. McCarthy? Do they make a play for Sam Darnold? The Steelers are going to be right there with the Giants looking at every available quarterback. For the Ravens, Mark Andrews, 2 for 27, likely 3 for 53. Nothing. It wasn't needed. It wasn't a very big passing performance because it just wasn't needed. But it was a good first step for the Ravens. For the Steelers, 7 in a row losing 7 in a row to close the season. What's going to happen with Mike Tomlin? Have we reached a point now where Mike Tomlin needs to go somewhere else? 10 plus years for any coach, and I believe Tomlin's been there now, 18? 10 plus years in one location is usually not a good situation for a coach because the voice just doesn't resonate anymore. Or as much. It doesn't get through anymore. And I really starting to think that maybe a fresh start is needed for both the Steelers and Mike Tomlin. Sometimes a coach is just there too long, and I think we might be at that point with Mike Tomlin, who hasn't won a playoff game in a long time. Now, he's a tremendous coach, don't get me wrong. And it's still, to me, one of the most amazing things about the Steelers organization is that they went from Chuck Noll to Bill Cowher to Mike Tomlin as spanning decades, when teams have 4 head coaches in 3 years. So that is unbelievable. But again, I think you reach a point where the voice that just doesn't carry the way it used to. And I think that that's what we're looking at with the Steelers, who really need to revamp this entire offense. All right, today, 1 o'clock, Bills, Denver. Listen, Bo Nix, I'm his biggest fan. I love the guy. This is a tough assignment for the Broncos in Buffalo today. You know, last week they did what they did against the Kansas City backups. You almost kind of want to throw that game out, put it out of your head. Buffalo, there's a lot of pressure. They've only made 1 AFC championship with Josh Allen. You know, MVP season for him again. Like, the numbers were just ridiculous. But I've also said this again in fantasy. I'm in 3 leagues this year. Josh Allen did not make the final in any of my 3 leagues. So the wisdom of using that late first-round pick, early second-round pick on a quarterback, sometimes it just doesn't work. Jared Goff was a quarterback in one of my leagues that won. The league winner in one of my leagues, Jared Goff, who was obviously a value. Baker Mayfield in the second league, he was a value. And then Jaden Daniels was an extreme value. So those were the 3 quarterbacks in my leagues that won. Not Jalen Hurts, not Pat Mahomes, not Josh Allen. I don't know what it was like in your league. And again, post in the comments. I want to hear who the winning quarterback was in your league. Was it one of these big 3? Was it a value guy? Because again, in a deeper dive, I'll do a deeper dive on this. How the points break down when you draft a quarterback in the first or second round compared to stocking up on receivers and running backs. But again, Bo Nix, this is a really well-coached team. Would it shock me if the Broncos won this game? Nothing would shock me. This one would surprise me. I think the Bills are on a mission. All right. The defense is playing well. Both defenses are playing well. The Broncos led the league in sacks. But I think that the Bills are on a mission this year. They smell blood. I think they get it done today. Eagles, Green Bay, this is going to be a tough go for the Packers. They don't have Christian Watson, torn ACL. Jordan Love is banged up. The Eagles get Jalen Hurts back. The Eagles have played as well as any team in the NFL the second half of the season. I hate to say it as a Giants fan, but Saquon Barkley has been everything they anticipated and more. I think the Eagles are going to win this one easily. And I think they cover that spread, the 5.5. And then finally, Washington and Tampa Bay. There's going to be 1 million points scored in this one. Marshawn Lattimore will play. This one could go either way. I think Washington matches up better. Their secondary has played really well the second half of the season. I think that's going to give Baker Mayfield and company fits. Mike Evans, Jalen McMillan is playing really well, and that's a name to remember for next year in terms of fantasy sleepers. Jalen McMillan, I think Chris Godwin, they're going to let him go, and Jalen McMillan is going to be a thing in fantasy next year. He could be a wide receiver 3. So if you start with Ladd McConkey, Jackson Smith-Njigba, and Jalen McMillan, that could be the most cost-effective, awesome trio of fantasy wide receivers you could have next year in PPR. But I think Washington, I've felt ever since this matchup came out, I've had the feeling Washington is going to win this game. They're playing with a lot of confidence. They match up really well against Tampa Bay defensively. I have a feeling they're going to win this game. And then tomorrow, Minnesota, Los Angeles. Tough situation for the Rams. They're dealing with a lot with the wildfires in Los Angeles. Just a horrible situation there. So they could be distracted. It could go one of 2 ways, though. They could be distracted. Their minds are on that. Or they come together in a really difficult circumstance and they defeat the Vikings. And the Vikings, as a 5th seed, 14-3, and they're the 5th seed. Like that, there's been a lot of talk now about the NFL revamping the playoff format for next year. And I think when you have a team with a 14-3 record who's on the road as a 5 seed, that's a little bit of a problem. I see the wisdom in the NFL discussing changing that playoff format. But for this one, I just feel Minnesota is the better team. The Rams have the worst defense statistically of any team in this playoff field. I think the Vikings are going to win this one. But here's the caveat, and I've spoken about this the last couple of weeks. Sam Darnold played terribly last week against the Detroit Lions, losing that game, losing the NFC North. If Darnold plays terribly again in this one and they lose to the Rams, then the Vikings will seriously contemplate letting him walk as a free agent and giving the reins to J.J. McCarthy. This is one of the biggest, if not the biggest storyline going into the offseason. What are the Vikings going to do at the quarterback position with J.J. McCarthy and Sam Darnold? Do they re-sign Darnold and keep McCarthy? Do they trade McCarthy to the Giants for the third overall pick? Do the Steelers make a play for him? All right? These are all things that are going to have to be looked at. This is one of the bigger storylines in the NFL going into the offseason. All right? So that's something that we're going to have to watch closely going forward. All right? But for me as a Giants fan, I have come around to the idea of trading the third overall pick to J.J. McCarthy. Now, the Giants passed on him with the number 6 pick last year and took Malik Neighbors. So now all of a sudden they're going to use the third pick? Well, that's the situation they're in. Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll, they need to win. They've been given another year, much to the chagrin of a lot of the Giant fan base. They need to win next year. So they need to get that quarterback. And maybe getting McCarthy, maybe it buys them another year. I don't know. But I think that's the guy you got to take. McCarthy's rated higher than both Shedeur Sanders and Cam Ward. And you're really starting to hear that these two guys are not exactly loved by the draft community, Sanders and Ward. That's going to be an issue. Quinn Ewers has decided to come out. He's out there. Carson Beck pulled himself out, which was the right decision. He's going to Miami. I think he's getting over $4 million. This whole NIL thing is just a disgrace. I mean, it really is. It's just an absolute clown show, this whole NIL garbage. It's basically free agency, college athletics. They need to come up with something. Like, it's getting out of hand. But that aside, Penn State, Drew Aller is definitely going to be going back to school after he played horribly in the playoff game a couple of days ago. It was just, really almost an embarrassing performance by him, throwing that late interception, and Notre Dame then came down to win the game. I admire James Franklin's aggressiveness there, because James Franklin has been panned about playing conservatively, not to lose a game, and this time he went for it and he got burned because Aller just threw a horrible pass. And, there was talk about, okay, if he comes out, he could be a top 10 guy. He can go ahead of Sanders and Ward. Absolutely not. I don't see it. Very mistake-prone quarterback. He needs another year of seasoning. He's going to go back. And so speaking of the college playoff, we have Notre Dame and Ohio State. And here's the thing. Both of these teams would not have gotten in with the 14 playoff. So anybody that's complaining about this 12-team playoff, oh, there's been blowouts, this team didn't get in, blah, 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 Alabama, both Ohio State and Notre Dame, who won 3 games to get here, would not have been in the 14 playoff. And to me, this is a compelling game. It's going to be an absolute smash in terms of the ratings. You have Notre Dame, Ohio State, 2 huge big-name programs. Freeman has done a great job coaching this Notre Dame team. Ryan Day has kind of pulled himself back from the ledge in terms of his job security with Ohio State. Ohio State's, I believe, a 10-point favorite in this one, which not surprised because they have the freshman, dynamo at wide receiver. They have NFL players up and down this roster. But Notre Dame, really well coached, playing great defensively. Leonard, the quarterback, is just okay, but he makes the timely throws when he needs to. This, to me, is going to be a closer game, in my opinion, than many people are giving it credit for. But on talent alone, Ohio State is the better team. I don't think there's any question about it. And like I said, the rookie receiver there in Ohio State, he would be, a lot of people are saying he would be the number 1 overall pick if he came out now after his freshman season. So that's really telling in terms of the amount of talent that this kid does possess. So we'll have to see what happens there. All right. So, wanted to pull up the NFL Hall of Fame situation. All right. Now, we're down to 15 names. All right. This list is going to get pared down. I believe that comes down to a final 8, I believe, when we get to the Super Bowl. And to me, this class is really interesting because of Eli Manning. All right. Now, me being in New York, you all know how I feel about Eli Manning, especially with the Giants having become the laughing stock of the NFL. It's always nice to look back on Eli Manning and what he accomplished here. Obviously, 2 Super Bowls, beat the Patriots twice, beat what looked to be the greatest team in NFL history, the undefeated Patriots, made 2 of the biggest throws you're ever going to see, the David Tyree helmet catch and then the Mario Manningham dime sideline toss. The fact that Manning was the MVP in both of those Super Bowl wins, big selling points for him as well. But there is a big discussion about if he should get in. He's going to get in, but whether he should get in on that first ballot. And it's a legit conversation. All right? A lot of people, let's start with the positives. All right? 57,023 passing yards and 366 passing TDs. That's 10th all-time in both of those. So Eli is 10th all-time in yardage, passing yards, and touchdowns. All right? He's one of only 13 quarterbacks, all right, to win 2 Super Bowls. And he's only one of 6 players to win Super Bowl MVP twice. One of only 6 in the history of the game. All right? Now, the negatives. All right, there's some negatives here. All right, one is his win-loss record. All right, 117 and 117 for his career. He's at even 500. All right, 9-26 his last 3 seasons. Passer rating career 84.1. He's 60th all time in passer rating. Never named All-Pro and only 4 Pro Bowls. All right, so there are some negatives there as well. But again, two MVPs of the Super Bowl, to me, that's pretty much automatic. All right. That to me is automatic. When you win the Super Bowl MVP twice, that to me is automatic. And I'm speaking on him going in on the first try. Now this is a really strong class. All right, let's look at the names here. Eric Allen, cornerback for the Eagles. Jared Allen, defensive end extraordinaire. Willie Anderson, the tackle for the Bengals. Jari Evans, great guard for the Saints. Antonio Gates, tight end for the Chargers. Torrey Holt, wide receiver for the Rams. Luke Kuechly, linebacker for the Panthers. Eli Manning. Steve Smith Sr., wide receiver for the Panthers. Terrell Suggs, defensive end, Baltimore Ravens. Fred Taylor, running back of the Jaguars. Adam Vinatieri, the kicker for the Patriots and Colts. Reggie Wayne, wide receiver for Indy. Darren Woodson, safety for the Cowboys. And Marshall Yanda, guard for the Baltimore Ravens. So I'm looking at this list. Now, for me, the Hall of Fame is an exclusive. The very, very best of the best get it. Now, the MLB Hall of Fame, and I'm going to talk about that in a minute, I feel that's been watered down. When you had a Harold Baines get in as a DH, I think some of these names that have been getting in, like Billy Wagner looks like he's going to get in. I don't think he's a Hall of Famer. I think it's been watered down a little bit. And I'm afraid that I don't want that to happen with the NFL as well. So I'm a very, very strict. I'm very, very tight when it comes to who I think should be in the Hall of Fame. Now, out of these 15, all right, Eric Allen, I don't have him on my list. Jared Allen, I do. I think Jared Allen is a Hall of Famer. All right, so I put Jared Allen on my Hall of Fame ballot. All right. Antonio Gates, to me, is a Hall of Famer as well. I don't think there's any question. Undrafted guy, basketball player, comes in and just puts up ridiculous numbers at tight ends. He redefined what the tight end position in the modern era is. When you look at someone like Isaiah Likely, super athletic guy at tight end, that emanated from Antonio Gates. So I think Antonio Gates absolutely is a Hall of Famer. Eli Manning, to me, is a Hall of Famer. I already gave you the stats why I think he is. Adam Vinatieri is a Hall of Famer in my book as well. I have Adam Vinatieri, no doubt, greatest kicker to me in the history of the game. And I also have Terrell Suggs. I think Terrell Suggs was just a monster. So my Hall of Fame ballot has Jared Allen, Antonio Gates, Eli Manning, Terrell Suggs, Adam Vinatieri, and Darren Woodson I really gave a lot of thought to as well. So if you want to put Darren Woodson in there, I won't quibble. So 5 or 6 guys out of the rest of them, that's who I have on there. All right. So I'm very, very tight when it comes to that, to the Hall of Fame. But let me know what you think about Eli Manning. All right, I'm going to put a poll up as well. Is he a first ballot Hall of Famer? I think he is. All right. Now, let's look at the MLB Hall of Fame ballot. All right. This is always a fun one too. All right. Roger Clemens, Barry Bonds off the ballot now. They, the association with steroids and all that, and you have A-Rod on there now with Manny Ramirez. So that, they're not going to get in as well. All right, so I just pulled up the ballot. So the 2025 Baseball Hall of Fame ballot, I have a number of names on here that I think very few names on this ballot that I believe are Hall of Famers. All right, so some of the newer names that are on here, I'm not going to get into. Like, some of these guys shouldn't even, I don't even think should be on here. Like Adam Jones, nice player. Russell Martin, Ian Kinsler. Like, these were nice players, but they're on the ballot right now. I don't think they're going to get in. I do think Billy Wagner's going to get in. He's been trending upwards for years. Great strikeout numbers, no doubt. But he's had a lot of issues in big games that I'm concerned about there. I just don't see Hall of Fame when I look at Billy Wagner. I'll give you my Hall of Fame guys now, and it's not a big list. Now you could pick up to 10 names. All right, I didn't get anywhere close to that. To me, right off the bat, Carlos Beltran's a Hall of Famer. Like, he was one of the most dynamic players ever. And he was just a tremendous 5-tool guy. Across the board, everything, goal, the speed, the power, everything. That was Carlos Beltran. All right, personified. I know he got caught up in the sign stealing stuff, and that's a black mark, no doubt about it. But he is a Hall of Famer. I don't think there's any question about it. I also have Ichiro Suzuki. Ichiro, there's nothing even to discuss. Like, he's 3,000 hits after playing for years in Japan. There's nothing to discuss. Speed, Gold Glove, just unbelievable player. The hits, everything. He was an impossible out. He's on there. I also have Torrey Hunter. I know I'm in the minority here. Check out how many Gold Gloves he won. Check out what a great hitter he was in terms of the power, all of that stuff. I think Torrey Hunter deserves it. And I think I had one more. I'm trying to look here. I'm not putting A-Rod or Manny Ramirez in. Dustin Pedroia was the conversation. Oh, Andrew Jones. Andrew Jones came up, tremendous glove hitter, power, everything. 19 years old, comes up on a playoff-bound team. He was tremendous. So that's my ballot. Let me know what you think. Post who you think deserves to go in the Hall of Fame. That's my list. It's not a big list either. But anyway, so we covered a lot today, guys. I really appreciate your time. Drop me a comment. Hit the subscribe button. Another podcast will come tomorrow after today's game, so stay tuned for that. And until then, guys, we will chat soon.